Hi guys, it's Y here. Today I'll be showing you how to implement WebAuthn and Passkeys authentication onto an iOS app. So let's get started. Alright, so right here we have the WebAuthN's website just to give you a little intro on what WebAuthn is. So let me scroll down to the bottom right here. Alright, okay, so what is WebAuthn? So WebAuthn is an API written by the W3C and FIDO organization, and it's a safer way to authenticate a user using authenticators. But what are authenticators? So authenticators, as you can see right here, it says with the strong authenticators now built into devices such as Windows Hello or Apple's Touch ID. So an authenticator is your user's device, right? So that could be your laptop or your iPhone or Android device. And the authenticator uses biometrics such as your Face ID or face recognition, or it could be your voice, or it could be your fingerprint. And with these authenticators, what they do is they generate a private key. So right over here, if you can see, it says with WebAuthn, it uses a private and public key pair to create credentials, right? And for WebAuthn to work, it needs a private and public key to authenticate user. It can't just use one. So the private key is generated on the user's device, and the public key is generated on the server. And what happens during the authentication, or let's say registration of a credential? The user's authenticator generates this private key, and the server generates the public key, and they send a challenge to each other to verify the user, and then once the challenge is verified, the user is logged in. And what makes this a more safer way of authenticating is that because the public key is stored on the server, if let's say a hacker, right, wants to hack into a user's credential, they might have access through the server for the public key, but they won't have easy access on the private key because that one is stored on the user's physical device. And just to give you a little more better explanation of it, we have a video right here on WebAuthn. Let me skip to a part just to show you a better explanation of how
we live in a world. This strong form of authenticate user standard.
All right,
Introducing WebAuthn, a new open standard that allows web servers to register and authenticate users using asymmetric cryptography instead of a password. With WebAuthn, you need two keys to let you in, a public key and a private key. The public key is encrypted and stored in the cloud by the service. The private key is stored locally in a trusted platform module and can't be stolen, unlike a password. This strong form of authentication allows you to log into your account by using the biometric sensors built into your device or with a security key instead of a password. With WebAuthn, when a user logs into a web application on a supported web browser, the server sends a challenge to that browser. The user then validates their identity using one of the authentication methods supported through the client to authenticator protocol. Once approved, only then is the challenge signed and returned. While WebAuthn can replace all passwords as a single factor, it's still considered multi-factor authentication, since the user is providing something they are, their biometrics ID, and something they have, their device. All the major operating systems and web browsers are building in native support for WebAuthn, so the journey to passwordless authentication has already begun.
All right, so as you can see, Apple does support passkeys. So just to bring up Apple's documentation right here about passkeys. So right here, passkeys are a replacement for passwords. And passkeys, as you can see right here, it says built on WebAuthn standard and uses public key cryptography. All right, so that's pretty much the gist of what WebAuthn is and how we're going to build that on our server side. Let me show you on the documentation right here. So according to their documentation, WebAuthn has libraries for Python, TypeScript, Ruby, Java, .NET, and Go. Unfortunately, I don't see Swift on here, but I did find one on GitHub right here for a Swift library implementing WebAuthn. So we will be using this. And how we will be implementing and building this API, we will be doing that through Vapor. And just to give you a little intro about Vapor, Vapor is a web framework that's written in Swift. And you could, just because it's written in Swift, this will be easier for iOS developers to create a backend without, just without learning too much about the other languages. But later on, this is for testing purposes at the moment, so that we will be building through Vapor. So later on, if you do want to integrate this to your backend using other languages, we can. So for our purpose, though, we will be building it through Vapor. And what we will be using as well as Docker, and we'll be using Docker to run our database, and we will also be using ngrok to expose this our application to the public internet, so that when we do test it through our physical device on our iPhone, we can connect it to our API. All right, so let's get started. We'll just show you an example that WebAuthn provided as well, just to give you a little gist of how WebAuthn works. So let's say we are on a web browser and we want to create a user credential, right? So let's say example user. Click register. Oh, sometimes it's a little bit buggy, so let's try it again. Let's try example user 1. All right, here we go. And then we put our Touch ID and it's authenticated, and let's try authenticating it now. All right, there we go. Now we're logged in. And you can see right here, we have our credentials right here at the bottom, description, it's our passkey. All right, so pretty much we'll be doing this, but on our iOS side. And yeah, let's get started from the iOS side.